Brodes Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Bleacher Report Live, and it is time to check in on your 76ers. And it's been a bizarre season. There's no sugarcoating it. When Joel Embiid went down after essentially being the most skilled guy in the entire damn league, it was so hard to watch. And you're seeing games against the New York Knicks where the squad is scoring 79 damn points in back-to-back games, by the way. 79 damn points. They actually won one of those games, which makes no sense at all. And then, of course, Tyrese Maxey had the concussion protocol issues. Tobias Harris became the worst version of Tobias Harris I've ever seen in my entire life. So you're dealing with all these issues, and it raises the question, can they survive without the big man? And then when Joel Embiid returns with maybe 7 games to go or so, do they have enough in the tank to have Joel Embiid playing good basketball, right? Because conditioning-wise, you need to let that sink in. Also, he's now working with new teammates. He never played with Kyle Lowry. He never played with Buddy Hield. He never played with Campaign. So you have to now introduce an entirely new set of weapons with a couple of games to go. What will that look like if you're making a push and a surge to make the postseason? Not only that, if you have to play a play-in scenario, it is a very unfortunate circumstance for us. I keep joking around that the one year we finally get over the hump, it wouldn't surprise me. And by the way, if I'm a betting man, I'm not putting a lot of money on this, and the odds should be at plus 8,000. So it's definitely not the norm to think that this would be the case. But just because it's traditionally always weird and wonky here in Philly, if they were to finally get over that second round hump and have a finals appearance, wouldn't this be the year where it happens, where the expectations are so low because right now you're battling a 6th seed, a 7th seed, a 5th seed? Where will you stand? Well, the year they get to the Eastern Conference Finals would be the year where the MVP of the league and the dude that can score at will and have one of the most efficient scoring ability I've ever seen, he's not available for you until the final week of the season. Whatever. We'll see where it all goes from here. But it is a situation where they're coming off of 2 straight wins as we record this. There's a West Coast swing coming up. They play Phoenix. They play the Lakers. They play the Clippers. They play Sacramento. But they did squeeze by Miami. Kyle Lowry at age 93 is jumping over the scoring table. Poor Matt Cord, the in-game announcer, does a magnificent job, by the way. He's dodging and ducking as bodies fly his way. Kyle Lowry leaving everything on the damn line, which we respect. And by the way, I got to admit that he's got more left in the tank than I anticipated. I saw him hobble down the stretch in years past with Miami. Looked like he was playing with one leg. I didn't know if he'd be able to have a burst or any sort of game left, but I guess maybe throwing on that Sixers uniform and having that long life dream of doing it gave him a little sense of urgency or something. But there's no doubt that he can help this basketball team way more than I ever envisioned, which is great. But they're coming off of a couple wins here. Tyrese Maxey dropping the 30 burger, and Kelly Oubre helping out as much as humanly possible. The question really becomes, though, do they have enough to hold the fort down? And do the Sixers have a real shot when Embiid returns? And that will be our Bleacher Report poll question of the show. Do the Sixers have a shot when Embiid returns? You have 2 options. Yes and no. And I always live and die with superstar talent. So when you have someone as scary as Joel, you're always in the mix. And we don't live in a world now where you have the 3-headed monsters, right? It's not as if all the teams that go win championships nowadays is filled with Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Klay Thompson in his prime. It's not LeBron James in Miami when it was Chris Bosh, D. Wade, and LeBron James, right? When Giannis wins a championship, the team is good. Don't get me wrong. They have a lot of talent surrounding Giannis when the Bucks won a title, but it's not as if you need those three-headed stars anymore. So it gives me more flexibility and the ability to open up my heart to a Joel Embiid returning and having Tyrese Maxey. My biggest problem, though, is I don't expect this to happen by any means. This is just my optimistic Sixers fan view of it all. But if I'm going towards the pessimistic side, my biggest issue with the current makeup of the Sixers is I don't believe that the timelines of Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid match. Joel Embiid is right now go in. Tyrese Maxey is a fantastic, fantastic player, an all-star. His trajectory, his ceiling is super, super high, and I can't wait. But it's a grown man's league, and I stand by that. When you win a title, go look at the history. When LeBron James won, go look at his age. When Michael Jordan finally won his first, go look at his age. Go look at the ages of when it's time for a guy to shine and win a title. Kawhi Leonard. And don't give me, by the way, when he's on a stacked roster in San Antonio. I'm talking about being the guy. And if this team is going to win a title, it's because Tyrese Maxey is going to help Joel Embiid and be a huge part of the guy. Like, he's got to be a part of the crew legitimately. And he's going to have to, as a ball handler, as a perimeter player, with Joel Embiid being a big man, he has to flourish insanely. And it's such a grown man's league. You got to learn how to get your calls. Sometimes he has a difficult time when he's driving to the basket, getting the whistle, getting to the free throw line. Now, some of that's not his fault. It's just the referees being a disaster and being horrible at their job. But he needs to be 27, 28, 29, 30, grown man's league. And their timelines are just not lining up right now, which raises another question. And Kyle Neubeck, who does an amazing job covering the Sixers, and there's been a lot of sort of leaks here and there in LA with the Clippers and Paul George, and the Sixers are interested. That's sort of been a hot topic over the last 24 hours here. And I think what you have to do, because, I took calls on my radio show last night about the Sixers, and someone said, if they don't get out of the second round this year, then you need to think about trading Joel Embiid. It's not time to have those topics, all right? It's just not. You have to go down swinging with Joel Embiid, no matter what. All right, I'm taking every single crack at it as I can with Joel Embiid. And if I strike out, so be it. I'd rather strike out than trade him, because give me an example of when somebody trades a talent like Joel Embiid and actually gets the return back where they get the upside of the trade. It doesn't happen. I don't want to relive the Charles Barkley scenario. So with that said, I don't really believe that Joel Embiid, Paul George, if you do have the money to throw around, if you're Daryl Morey, to snag him from LA, steal him from the Clippers, and put him together with Maxey and Embiid, it puts you in a way better position than you're in right now. But I don't know if at age 34, because keep in mind, Paul George is turning 34 in May. You give him a big fat contract. Now you got Paul George at 34, 35, 36, 37. It seems like you backed yourself into a corner, and because you need to maximize every potential Joel Embiid run that you can, because he's such a unique talent, that it's like, okay, we have to give this one a shot because, well, we have to try and save this the best way possible. And while it's not a disaster by any means, I don't know if Paul George at late 30s is enough for you to go win the title, but it's better than not doing it at all. And I think you have to, because I'm living and dying with every Joel Embiid season the best way that I can. And there's really not many options elsewhere. And I hate to look ahead in the next offseason and all, but if you're a true Sixers fan and you're being honest, of course that's something that's happening, because it's hard to really expect this team to do something when it's been as fragile as it has. Some nights you're getting blown out by 30. It's not competitive at all. And Tobias Harris has been horrendous. Now, he wasn't available for you over the last couple of games, and whoop-de-doo, you go win a few. But here's my take on the Tobias Harris stuff, and here's my stance. I always say that he's not as bad as what Sixers fans say that he is. And his contract, he'll never live up to those numbers. So you sort of have to sway or maneuver through the Tobias Harris experience the best way you possibly can. but he's also not as pathetic as we've seen, where he forgets how to play the sport. Defensively, he's leaving his assignments and looking tragic. In previous postseason runs, he was locking up Jason Tatum as best as humanly possible. And people would try and downplay that, but you got to think about this. When you were Doc Rivers in previous 7-game series, your biggest question you ask heading into the 7 games is, who am I going to put on Tatum? And Tobias Harris answered the bell and actually had some pretty respectful possessions, respectful quarters, respectful games against Tatum. And you just got to realize that if you are going to do it against a team like Boston, and in previous years, you lacked more size on the perimeter, so it was way more of an emphasis, whereas this year, you do have some different options, but then, of course, you're dealing with the DeAnthony Melton injury, which he was an option for you last year. When he's on, and he can cash in 4 threes, but when he's off, it's horrendous. It's just another athletic option, though, out on the perimeter, even though size is in play with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and that matchup is always going to give these team problems. But my point is, with Joel Embiid returning, if you're thinking, can this team still have life and do anything, even if they skip the play-in or they have to play in the play-in, if Joel is back and you envision this team actually finding some sort of momentum, playing decent basketball, and who knows where it can go, I think you need Tobias. I don't think in any world this can happen with Tobias coming off your bench, playing 12 minutes, or just playing as awful as he's been playing. You need him. So if you need him, do I feel like it's a problem that Nick Nurse is giving him some minutes, as we saw prior to this most recent injury that left him off the court, to keep playing him, to keep getting him shots, to keep looking for matchups, to see mismatches, and to ask him to go attack? My biggest issue is that dude can't hit a bunny. The guy is so tall. He's so good in basketball, just from a general sense, that you would think 2 feet from the basket, you could put it in the hoop. You can lay it up, but he misses more bunnies and more layups and more 1-foot shots than anybody in the history of the NBA. I want them to go do a deep dive on StatCast and show me the worst efficiency that close to the rim, and it has to be Tobias Harris. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He needs to get better there. It makes me pull my hair out nonstop. But in all seriousness, I was almost the last person on earth that was willing to give Tobias some free run, but it got to such an unacceptable point. Even I was jumping off the Tobias Harris bandwagon, and when I do that, it automatically means that there's nobody left in the city. Not because I think he's a spectacular talent, but when he plays his efficient hoops and he's shooting 7 of 10 from the field, he knocks down a couple threes, he brings that good versatility on the defensive side and buys into defending. That's an important role that sometimes we overlook just because people don't like the name Tobias Harris. I am a little stunned that he lasted this entire contract. You would just imagine at some point you ship him out of town, another team utilizes him as maybe a pro, a veteran to help out the youth in their locker room if they're trying to really establish something else and they're going through an identity crisis. And Tobias is still a good dude and a good leader and approaches the job like a pro and hits the road trips and doesn't mess around outside of the game of hoops. He's not doing the James Harden lifestyle where the guy's bouncing around different clubs nonstop looking for wings, if you know what I'm saying. Right, a little chicken wing action. Everyone knows where the best chicken wings in town are. So he's not playing that life. And maybe by the end, with 1 year left, the team would be willing to eat that money and make a move. But no, he's going to play this whole thing out, which is just absurd. I feel bad for Nick Nurse, though. I really do, because he's got to find a way to get Tobias going. But when he took this job, isn't it obvious that there was one thing in mind? I get to get my hands on Joel Embiid. I get to work with one of the most insane talents this league has to offer. And he's seen it firsthand from the other side. And I'd have to imagine if you're Nick Nurse and you see Joel when you're on the Toronto Raptors sideline, it's like, wow, this guy is sensational. This guy's gross. This guy's amazing. Just like when we watch someone else from a distance, wow, I could only imagine what I could do with that player, and you finally get the opportunity to. Doc Rivers leaves. There's this big, sexy, appealing big man that you could do so many different things with. MVP, efficient scoring. Hey, I don't know where this James Harden thing goes, but remember, he had to deal with the James Harden stuff as well. Who's going to be the primary ball handler? Maybe we got to ask Maxey to do some more things. And at the time of the trade with Buddy Hield, he was even facilitating. Remember? It wasn't too long ago where that guy would log 8 assists, 9 assists. It would come with some turnovers, but that's because you're putting him in an uncomfortable situation and you're asking him to do some things that, isn't necessarily in his bag at that particular time. You just need him to shoot. But at times when he's off, it's hard to watch. They're living and dying without Embiid, with just Buddy Hield chucking it up, and he'll shoot 2 from 9 from 3, which obviously isn't good enough, and then they can't score, and that's how you end up with 79 points against the New York Knicks in 2 straight games. I seriously don't know how they won one of those games, but they did. I mean, I'm proud of their fight without this. I know it's not easy. And when Tyrese Maxey returned, it's obviously a completely different roster with a ton of speed, his ability to go to the basket and drive and finish tough layups when there's body contact. He probably should earn a free throw and get to the charity stripe, but the Zebras decide to keep the whistles in their pocket for whatever reason. They really make him work to get to the line at times. I think it's crazy. The dude could have 6 people. Somehow there's 6 people on him with 2 hands in his face. He gets smacked in the nose. There's blood coming out of him. He gets hit in the eyeballs. He looks to be dizzy. He finishes a game, and then he gets concussion protocol. 1 free throw attempt. 1 free throw attempt. What game are you watching? What game are you watching? So it's been a weird experience for me. I won't lie. I won't sugarcoat anything. There was a time when you flipped from the process to the Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid era, and Brett Brown was here, and you were constantly winning 50-plus regular season games. It was awesome that basketball mattered again in this town, and regular season hoops was something to really look forward to. And what has happened now is, at that time, I was college hoops nonstop, because I was really putting a ton of emphasis on where are they going to go in the draft. If the lottery happens to spin our way and the balls pop out of the lottery machine and the Sixers are for, where are they going to go? And I'm looking at Jahlil Okafor. I'm watching Ben Simmons at LSU. I'm studying so much tape on what potential prospects could be here. And then once we sort of made that natural progression, college basketball is a little different for me now. You're in this weird spot with the Sixers without Joel, and it's like, can they just get by? So it's a very strange night-to-night basis. I remember where every game was so important in the regular season just because it was fun again to finally go through something that mattered in pro hoops here. And now it's sort of come full circle where a lot of fans don't put stock into these 50-plus regular season games, and it's just about getting over the hump and finally winning in the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, that's the end goal, of course. But when everyone's healthy and when this team makes a lot of sense and they're not dealing with the injuries that they are right now with Joel, these games do matter because there's a journey, and it's about learning how to play with one another, making additions at the deadline, incorporating those additions. Nick Nurse is clearly a tactician, and he does some creative things. Sometimes his lineups are a little wacky, but I'm not going to nitpick right now when you have to go through the trial and error experience. So the way that he uses Paul Reed, the way that he uses KJ Martin, the way that he uses Mo Bamba, sometimes it gets a little all over the place, but what do you expect when you are so desperate? This is what happens when you need to find answers, and Tobias is struggling, but Batum is dealing with the groin. He's up there in age. I keep hearing this. Bench Tobias Harris and throw Batum in there. And okay, but can you actually expect Batum to handle that workload at that age? Is that something that you can demand from him? Or at some point, you're thinking a 7-game series, right? You're thinking about the idea of battling in war on the court in a very toxic to your body type of 7-game series fight. Can Batum hold that level of weight? Is he ready for that? I don't know. This regular season would tell me that he won't be able to stay upright for that. And I believe with the current roster, if they're going to seriously do anything, even the Robert Covington experience has been a little all over the place, and he hasn't been able to be healthy for you. It's been a lot of ups and downs, but you have to find a way to get Tobias Harris going if you have any sort of opportunity to make something happen during Joel Embiid's return in this late stretch. So that's why I'm not as crazy about benching him and sitting him. He's got to work out of it. And I would have expected him to do it by now. And at some point, I know you have to sort of put your hands up and acknowledge that it might just not happen. But I think I got to give it every opportunity to, because if he isn't good and you got to go with Batum, or you got to go with Covington, or you got to go with somebody else, I don't think that's enough. The best version of Tobias Harris might be enough. The rest aren't enough. It might be enough. I don't know. I don't know. Probably not, because it's a tall ask. But what gives me the highest percentage? I think it is Tobias. The best Tobias is better than Batum. The best Tobias is better than Covington. The best Tobias is better than any of these other names on the roster. So I don't know how they get it out, but they got to find a way to get it out. So that's just sort of where I stand on this Sixers team currently. And I am excited to see how they respond against teams that are in the postseason right now in the West Coast, in the Western Conference. The Kings are in 6th at the time of this recording. The Clippers are in 4th. The Lakers are in, 9th. The Suns are in 8th. So just something to monitor as they have a little West Coast swing here. And I can see maybe 2-2. Is it too much to ask for a little 2-2 action? Anything worse than that is a tough watch. All right, 1-3, not good enough. 0-4, not good enough. 2-2, all right. It's just about keeping your head above water, right? That's sort of the view on this whole thing, and we'll see where it goes from there. All right, everybody, thank you all so much for watching here on Bleacher Report Live, and I will see you guys again very, very soon.